Okay, so we're just going to review then this final little add-on, our Part 5C. And really what we're talking about here, the point I'm making is so far, yes, most of our focus has been on the doctor-patient relationship. Now we added in the medical history, this whole business here, right? But really we've just been talking about doctor-patient. However, virtually all of our work has been to do with the patient. Everything we've done, we've focused on the patient. And I just kind of want to remind ourselves that in any relationship, there's always two sides to it, right? So the doctor is just as important as the patient. So this is a little exercise in just adding something in the user interface reflected on how the doctor knows about the patients themselves, right? So here's our project. I have it open here. So if I just come for a second to models, let's go to the doctor's model. I just want to point out, we added these nice summary properties, but here are the basic ones. First, middle, last name. They're the ones that we have fully a get and set. They're the ones that are actually stored in the database, right? But remember, right at the beginning, we added this little line of code down here, okay? So the doctor can optionally carry around with it an I collection of the patients that belong to the doctor, so to speak, the ones that are assigned to this doctor as their primary care physician. Now, we haven't made much use of it yet. It was part of our standard approach with any one-to-many relationship to put code like this in the parent object, but we haven't done much with it. So let's actually do that now. It'll only be a quick demo. If I come to the doctor controller, my thought is that, hey, on the details view, if I'm going to go in and see the details of a doctor, why not just show a list of all the patients right there that belong to the doctor, so to speak, right? So all I really have to do is come to the link query in the details action. Look at that. I have context.doctors. I have added the ASNO tracking. We're using first or default. So really all I want to add is our .include. I can just go include the patients inside the doctor. That's so much easier than writing a whole fancy join clause and the whole bit, right? Okay, so that's it. The only change I have to make in the controller. Now, if I come down to the views and go to the doctor details view, remember this is the one that basically it just shows the first, middle, and last name of the doctor in this little DL description list, right? So I'm just going to go inside the list. I'm just going to add another DTDD pair here, right? That will allow us to show a list of patients for the doctor. Now you might recall when I kind of was touring through the more or less finished version of our medical office that we'll get to at the end of the term, when we went to the doctor details, we actually had something like a tab control where we could just tab through and look at all different kinds of related information. We'll get there, but for now I just thought I'd show a quick simple list, right? So that's what I have here, okay? So I'm just going to use the display name for patients. Well, remember, that is from our doctor class, right? And because I didn't add a display name because the word patients is sufficient, is good enough, right? But that's where it's coming from, just to make sure you understand that. So the display name for patients is just patients, right? So that's what's going to be in the DT. Then in here, I'm throwing in a table. It's a nice way to arrange columns of information, right? So I have my header row, display name for, display name for, display name for, and I just decided I'm not going to show everything, right? I've chose to do these three things. The summary, okay, which is basically the full name of the patient, where we put the first, middle, and last name together. The age and the phone number, right? Just thought that might be useful information to have on the screen. Run it by your client, make sure they're happy with that, change it if they want you to, right? Let me just, before I go down here, I'll point out a little something here besides ignore the green little underlines. Get used to ignoring them a lot because, of course, if we didn't add the patients into the doctor, this possibly could be null. But anyway, notice what we're doing here. We're going to our model. The model is our doctor, right? So I'm going to the model, going to the patient's collection, which could be null, but it won't be because I did my .include, right? Why do I need first or default when I want to access display name for? We didn't have to do that, for example, if I bring up the doctor index, okay? I just said display name for the property of the model, right? Anyone see the difference? This patients isn't a single object, it's a collection. So how do I access the summary property or the age property and so on, right? It's a collection of objects. So that's why this little bit of a trick here in link says, hey, go to any one of them there, find first or default, okay? The first one that you find, and then we can access .summary, right? So that's where we can get the display name for a member of a collection by doing that extra little step. All right, so that gives us my column headings. Then I have a for each loop, looping through each item. I just called it item. In our model is the doctor.patient. So for every patient assigned to the doctor, right, we'll just create a row of data inside the table itself. The only other tricky thing I'm doing here that we haven't before, see, we have just display for the item.age, because each item in this case is an actual patient, not a collection. It's one patient at a time as we loop through the patient's collection, right? So we can just access the age, the phone, the formatted version of the phone number, and so on. But in this first row, I just thought I'd throw this in as well, showing that, hey, it's so easy to create these URIs, right, inside using these tag helpers that are part of the MVC approach, right? We have ASP-controller. So in other words, I'm going to be showing here display for the summary of the actual patient, the patient's full name, right? That's what's going to be visible on the screen, but I can wrap it inside of an anchor tag, and I don't have to worry about trying to figure out what kind of a complex, no matter where I'm hosting this, link it's going to be. I can just say, hey, go to the controller, patient, the action, details, but remember we also in this case have to pass the ID of the patient. That's the route value, and the route value parameter is ID, and we get it from the actual ID of the item, which in this case is the actual patient themselves. So there we are, a bit of clever programming I think, but it gets it all together, and let's just see it actually run, hopefully. If I didn't mess up a curly brace somewhere or something, we shouldn't get any build errors. Oh, darn, did I? Okay, yes, you can have my firstborn son, no problem. As long as I didn't select HTTPS, we're going to be okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sure we have lots of patients here, but now I can go to doctors. I can pick anybody. Maybe I'll go right for Gregory House at the top, click details, and there we are, right? So we have the actual details, first, middle, last name at the top, and now we've added this table listing all the patients, okay, showing the names, the ages, the phone number, and of course the neat thing is I can click on these as well. Notice the URI, how it changes. We're in doctor/details/1. If I click this, now I'm in patient/details/ the ID of Wilma Flintstone, right? Now, just be aware, this is kind of an interesting thing here. If I click back to list, where am I going to go? I'm going to go back to the patient list, right? Yeah. But if I use the browser's own back button, then I can get back again to the doctor details, right? But just remember, these links are all set up to work within. They're kind of like a stacked interactive tool to work within the one controller at a time, unless we do something special like we've done here, right? So pick anybody I want. I can go see all their patients, and that's useful information. The whole point is the fact that two sides to a relationship. It hasn't been all about the patient. It has been all about the patient, but now we can see that the doctor as well can know about the patients just as the patient can know about the doctor. Any questions about that quick little demo? That was just the last little bit I wanted to get into step 5. It's already in the solution file that, as I've said, is posted up in Brightspace. You can grab the whole code that I'm showing here right now. And then sometimes I like to, while I'm even watching the lessons and learning, it's nice to have a copy of the finished product that you've done so far to actually look and test and see what's going on. All right, good. I'll stop the recording.